Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, January the 5th, 2026, and today we are planting and raving about fennel, and we get a question about lowering and leaning stuff. So let's do it. It is January the 5th. That's good. Kind of guessed. All right, everyone, happy Monday and welcome to your first official week as a 2026er. I hope you all are feeling good about the new year and the next season of life, of growing, of MLS and NWSL, which will be back soon before we know it. It is the year of the World Cup as well here, 2026, in the United States this time. Looking forward to that. Definitely going to get lots of work done that month. Absolutely. Not going to lie, as a farmer, I kind of liked it when they had the World Cup in November. But anyway, had a great weekend here. Started getting some leaves from our wonderful neighbors. So that's a nice little January surprise. Started pruning some fruit trees as well, which the cicada damage is way worse than I realized. Remember those goofballs, the cicadas? That was a fun 2025 throwback. Well, the fruit trees look like they've been nibbled pretty good from it all the way up the top stems. So not my favorite thing. We'll see how they rebound this year. I also just randomly started watching the Chief of War show on Apple this weekend, the one with Jason Momoa. And it is really interesting. It's a sort of like dramatized glimpse into what that period was like before colonization of Hawaii in the late 1700s and early 1800s. A little violent, obviously, so be warned there, but it's a period of history I've just been really interested in over the years. So yeah, enjoying that. Speaking of things to watch, as we head into the 2026 growing season, always feel free to send your 20-second farm video clips to farmermike@no-tillgrowers.com. We'd love to see what you're up to as we ramp back up and get ready to have a great 2026 growing season, aren't we? All right, so I finished out 2025 with a series on mulch, and I thought I would start 2026 with a different series. This one, a little crop guide every Monday. Nothing too intensive or where you have to take notes necessarily, though I'm not going to stop you. I can't physically. I'm not a wizard. But I got this comment/request from a Patreon member, JD, who wrote, quote, "Hello, Farmer Jesse. I am an aspiring market gardener from South Carolina, Zone 8B. I have been watching the No-Till Growers YouTube channel for over 2 years now. I was wondering if you could do a series of videos about different vegetable crops, going over topics like their profitability, storage, seed starting/sowing, harvest time, nutritional needs, and more. I know you have already done videos for crops like tomatoes, peppers, onions, lettuce, beets, etc., but I know there are even more crops that a market gardener can grow than those: beans, summer squash, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, sweet potatoes, collards, sugar peas, radishes, garlic, and so many more. Thank you so much, and just keep growing," end quote. Thank you for this, and now I love this idea in general. One whole main point of the show is to provide content on stuff that would not be necessarily like worth making content out otherwise. Like if a single video about growing, I don't know, sugar snap peas, for instance, would not do as well as a video about growing tomatoes because there's just fewer people that are going to be interested in that particular crop. It just flatly would not generate the revenue. This is the whole problem with content creation. If you don't make the stuff that people want to watch, they just won't watch it. And then you can't make that stuff because you can't afford to. But because the show has a relatively dynamic funding model, thanks a lot to our Patreon members, we can venture out of that box a little bit. Of course, I don't know how detailed I can get with each of these less common market crops. Crop breakdowns are frankly the most research heavy and time intensive subjects I cover. So there is just not enough time in the day or in a week to fully cover every crop every day. But what I thought I would do is a version of this request and start a series exploring some of the other crops that get less attention in the market garden world, such as beans, peas, etc. Now, I've done garlic, I've done sweet potatoes, I've done some of those other crops, but I'm going to revisit a lot of stuff. So I put a little spreadsheet together with some of these sorts of crops that you don't see as much of or hear as much about. And every Monday we will cover one and get as specific as I can and go as many weeks as I can. Right now I have enough for like 40 weeks. I'll probably add on to that. And anyway, today I thought we'd start with one of my favorite crops that I think is underrated as a market crop, is a lot of fun to grow, and is great roasted, shaved into a salad, grilled, you name it. It is also one of the few crops that can be used as an herb, a spice, and a vegetable. That's fun. Of course, if you read the title or listened to the intro, you know that I'm talking about the mighty fennel. Now, not everyone loves fennel. The anise thing can throw people off. I love me some licorice, but that's not for everyone. But the people who do know it and love it, love it. That tends to be chefs and foodies, but it's got some ties to French and Italian cuisines as well. Fennel seeds are used in various Indian and Middle Eastern dishes, and a palate cleanser for digestion at the end of a meal. Love that. So in terms of marketing this crop, chefs of those cuisines will be one place to start. More creative restaurants in general may be interested in local fennel as well. We found that nice looking bulb fennels can sell really well at markets, but not all season. Like you can usually get 1 or 2 weeks where people really love to see it. And that's usually in like June or so. And we could move a fair bit of fennel then. And then after that, it sort of fizzles out for a bit. And then we would move most of it through restaurants. I start with the marketing stuff only because that's where you should start with really any crop. Can I actually sell this thing? Or for backyard growers, do I actually want to eat this crop? If your clientele is mostly, like casual veggie eaters who are more interested in sweet corn, beans, potatoes, and tomatoes, then it may be worth just starting small with this one to see if there are any takers. But honestly, because it's a reasonably long season crop at around 70 days to maturity, if your market research doesn't yield much interest, literally just asking customers, clients if they'd be interested, it may not be the crop for you. If you are selling through a CSA, however, it can make a fun mid-season or even late season addition to the mix that customers may enjoy for its uniqueness, changing things up a little bit. It's kind of the thing with CSAs. For varieties, we've always done well with Preludio and Fino, with Preludio tending to win out in terms of quality and disease resistance in our stupidly wet climate, and because it's fun to say Preludio. It's a fun word to say. However, you can try a few varieties. You'd even start with longer day length ones planted with the shorter day length ones to extend the harvest a bit per planting so as not to have, to plant them every week or two. I do the same thing with carrots. And as you will recall, I plant like 60-day maturity carrots and 70-day to maturity carrots kind of at the same time so that I don't have to plant multiple times and deal with carrot beds. But also so I have a continuous harvest for a few weeks. If you only started the 60-day variety, by the time you got through them all, they can be, like overly big, or you'd have to plant them every week. We start fennel seeds in the soil blocks made from a 35 block standing blocker, roughly the size equivalent of a 128, but with slightly more volume per cell, with 1 to 2 seeds per block, then down to 1 plant per block. They are reasonably high temp germinators at between 75 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or 23 to 26 degrees Celsius. So we start them in late February or early March and usually transplant them in April. Now, when we do that, we protect them with frost protection because we don't want them to get frosted, not because they aren't hardy. They are okay hardy, but because fennel plants will bolt if they feel like they've gone through a winter. So if you plant them before a frost, the protection is key. All right, we'll take a Patreon question at the break, and then in the third segment, we will talk about spacing and growing fennel. Up first, though, will you be lowering and leaning this year? It's not a TikTok craze, I guess. BRB.
Hello, Farmer Jesse from Central Arkansas. This is the wild-crafted garden space that my friend and I built 2 years ago in the middle of a forest. We enjoy growing lots of native passion flower and other climbers on the fence, and then in the open area we've been growing lots of roselle, hibiscus, and peppers.
Thank you so much for everything you've taught us on this channel.
Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 47 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all one word, 26NOTILL, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTILL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Lisa Burton, who asks, quote, "Hi, Jesse. Topic suggestion, lower and lean method of greenhouse tomato growing. I think you have covered this in the past. I need a refresher. Love the show. Thanks, Lisa from Thornberry Farm, Zone 8B, Seaside, Oregon." Oh, a couple of 8Bs today. End quote. All right, great. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, why not a little refresher on the lower and lean method of tomato and cucumber and other crop production, as you are probably all getting your tomato plants together for the new season coming up, if you are up here in the northern hemisphere at least. So the lower and lean method, what is it? Well, the lower and lean method is an approach to trellising tall, continuously growing plants to maximize garden space. This is mostly done indoors, though in drier climates it can be fine to do outdoors as well. The reason that it's not so much of an outdoor thing is, well, a couple reasons. First, the trellis system requires a permanent, very weight-tolerant trellis structure to hang the plants from. So in order to do it outside, you need a tall structure, arbitrarily 7 feet tall at the lowest, I guess, with a lot of stability, something the wind can't blow over, and that will hold up hundreds, if not even thousands of pounds of tomatoes at a time. So there's that. But also, this is an incredibly labor-intensive style of production, and the field tomatoes in humid climates, for sure, simply do not last as long, no matter how happy the soil is. The wetness on the leaves from the humidity and the rain and the dew just begs for fungal diseases. So putting that amount of labor, the amount required for the lower and lean system, which is a very labor-intensive trellising system, into a field in the open just doesn't make sense on a production scale outdoors for most of us. For instance, in the tunnel, I can grow tomatoes here from April until I usually have to kill them in November because they're in the dang way. In the field, I can plant tomatoes in May, and then they are usually done by August. So yeah, more worthwhile to put the work into the tunnels because it's going to last several more months. Anyway, here is what the system looks like. And again, you can use it for tomatoes and cucumbers and even other crops like peppers in really long season areas, though our season doesn't typically last long enough without external heating for peppers to become lower and lead crop, but whatever. The idea with lower and lean is that you use special hooks or reels to tie the plants up to a line going the length of the tunnel. As the tomatoes or whatever crop grow, you lower the tomatoes down so they don't run into the roof of the tunnel because they will grow effectively indefinitely. In a good year, our tomatoes can be something like 30 feet long or more by the end of the season. However, whenever you lower a semi-stiff tomato plant, it kind of sticks its butt into the pathway and gets in the way and lays on the ground and just becomes somewhat inconvenient. I've heard of people manipulating the stems into pots as they lower them below each plant, but most people don't go through that trouble and instead lean the plants down the line. What this means is that they let a little bit of slack out of the hook or whatever it is, lower the plant down, then move it down the line a little ways. So instead of the excess stem jutting out into the pathway, it leans over the beds and basically the hook moves over to where its neighbor was before the same trellis. After a while, the effect is that the tomatoes are all very far away from where they started, leaning over one another. Thus, the lean part of lower and lean. The hooks or spools typically do this with twine. The clipper system, QLIPR system, is a little bit different. I've gone into it before on here, but it basically accomplishes the same thing. It allows you to lower the plant and lean it down the line without a ladder or twine, which is quite nice, but isn't without its own complications. Now, the lean and lower system is more labor intensive because in order to do this without disease issues and without a total mess erupting from your tomato trellis, you have to heavily prune the plants, removing all the suckers, old fruit clusters, old leaves, and basically down to about 13 to 15 fresh leaves once production starts. And that has to be done about once a week at prime season, which, depending on the amount of tomatoes you are growing, is a ton of work. We do about 100 stems, 2 from each plant, called the double leader system, and it takes the better part of a morning to prune all of them well and then lower and lean them. So that labor has to be factored into the profitability, which is why a lot of people don't think tomatoes are as profitable as people assume they are for the price they fetch. Anyway, I hope that was a nice little refresher on how all this works. Happy to do more segments on tunnel tomatoes as the season goes on for sure. But for now, let's take a quick break and then return to our fenneling. Fenneling, that sounds like a verb. Should be a verb. Be right back. It is like January 4th, my friend. What are we doing? Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Ohio Earth Food. So you got your soil tested or need your soil tested, it's time to contact Ohio Earth Food. Since 1972, they have been growers' trusted source for organic soil amendments to apply before you plant to prevent those deficiency symptoms that limit production. Their knowledgeable staff have all been a part of certified organic operations and can help you choose the best products for your soil and deliver or ship them right to your farm. With locations in Northwest Ohio and just north of Madison, Wisconsin, Ohio Earth Food wants to be your partner for organic inputs. Don't count on luck this year. Start your seeds in the Seed Catapult potting soil and put their Revita fertilizers in your beds, and rest assured that your plants will have all the nutrients, stimulants, and energy for whatever comes their way. Feed your soil and let your soil feed the plants. Visit them at ohioearthfood.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so we're going to continue on with our fennel planting, our fenneling. I typically grow fennel until it is about 4 inches tall, give or take. Now, not a lot of stuff will bother fennel. Our main pest tends to be swallowtail butterflies that the larva just kind of eats it. But when it's young and tender, things like a giant American rodent that we call the white-tailed deer and its partner in jerkery, the rabbit, will devour it. So typically when I plant fennel, I like to cover it for a week or two just to establish the plant and grow it out of its deliciousness for rodents phase. For soil preparation, nothing super unusual here. It's not a particularly fussy crop. Some good compost, maybe with some feather meal for slower nitrogen release, can do the trick nicely, getting it big, but keeping it nice and healthy and white too. They are slow, so there is a small amount of interplanting potential there, but only with shallow-rooted, unfussy crops like lettuce. It's considered somewhat antagonistic as an interplant, so I don't emphasize this too much. And that's kind of been my experience too. I haven't tried it with everything, but it did not do well with like beets or spinach for me. So I stick with things like lettuce. That way you could plant the fennel between the lettuce heads, harvest the head lettuce, and allow the fennel another couple weeks to mature and then harvest the fennel. Don't plant them too close though, or disease, fungal generally, with these crops could become an issue for either plant for poor airflow. For spacing, I usually go with the 4x4 gritter, so roughly 8 inches by 8 inches or 20 centimeters apart in a grid. If you do it with lettuce on a 4-foot bed, that would be like 3 rows of lettuce and 3 rows of fennel, or 6 rows of fennel, or whatever you're doing, or 6 rows of fennel if you're just monoculturing that thing. On a 30-inch bed, it would be like 4 rows of fennel, or 2 and 2 if you're planting it with something else. Now, again, fennel is somewhat slow, so keeping the weeds out is going to be important. Regular cultivation or a good mulch will be helpful in that. Then water them regularly to keep them from getting too fibrous. They do okay in dry weather, but water will keep them tender and growing large bulbs, which are really just enlarged stems that look like bulbs. But anyway, so at harvest, we will cut them at the soil surface, pull off the outer leaves if need be, and depending on the client, we may keep the fronds on, a great herb for juicing or cocktails or just herbing, or we will band the fronds together to keep them somewhat tight and take them to market just like that. They do usually need to be washed and cleaned up a little bit, so we will spray them, dry them, and then pack them into a cooler with the fronds on, or maybe lightly trimmed. And with the fronds on, you will only get a few good days of storage because the fronds will kind of suck some of that moisture out. With the fronds off in like cooler temperatures, like a walk-in cooler, you can easily get a couple weeks in a very lightly ventilated container. The fronds can dehydrate quickly at market, so having a spray bottle to keep them looking fresh is preferred. Or if they start to look a little bit limp, just cut the fronds off at market and sell the bulbs. In terms of profitability, this one will depend heavily on how much you can charge. In a big market or with chefs, you can charge at least a few dollars per pound, and each one can weigh easily a pound. So if you're looking to get 400 or 450 good units out of a bed, that's $1,200 to $1,400 minimum gross from a bed if you can grow and sell it at that price. which is not bad in terms of profitability. At 70 days, it's a little slow to get to that number, admittedly, but it can definitely be profitable when done right. Otherwise, that's kind of the breakdown of this anise gem. Let us know your thoughts and feelings and fennelings. Do you like eating it or growing it? How's it been? How's the market for you on fennel? Lessons learned? Let us know. And otherwise, we are done for this Plantings and Ravings Monday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of January, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Dirt Plumber D, cool, and Hannah Brown. Shouts to you all. All right, so let's kick off our story this week. This week's story is going to be about a referee. Her name is Jamie. She's 14 years old, and she's a soccer referee. In fact, she's obsessed with it. She's obsessed with refereeing. Jamie is an okay player, too, in her words, not mine. I don't judge. And plays for her middle school in the spring and then JV in the fall, but it's not really her passion. Her passion is the rules. Her passion is running up and down the field, making the calls, keeping the game flowing, and handing out the occasional yellow card to a player or coach when they get out of line. That's particularly fun. And because the way the rules work for Jamie and her league, she's not allowed to ref kids her age, only really like younger kids. And occasionally, much older, she will help out, like for Sunday league matches with 40-year-old plus dads, which are among her favorite because, dads love her. But one day, she is refereeing a U12 select game, and everything changes. That is for tomorrow on What's the Call? I feel like I've called one of these stories What's the Call before, but maybe there's a tie-in, or maybe I didn't. Who can even keep up with these things? Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.